Great. Now let's begin. Hello, everyone. So today we are here to talk about specifically about building Docker images. Okay. And I can zoom in a bit. So we are going to talk about building Docker images, right? An expectation is that you already are aware of Docker or containers, right? So if you already know what is a container, how do we use a container, how do we manage containers, run applications inside the containers, connect to them, disconnect with them, manage or use Docker images, like download them or at least browse the images. That will be really helpful because this is not Docker basics session. This is a session um, where we specifically talk about how do we build Docker images. And actually, it should not be Docker images. It should be how do we build container images, right? Docker is a very specific tool and a company. So the images are not specific to Docker. Those are called container images. Docker is one of the container technology providing company. So generally it is used interchangeably, but it should be container images. So we are going to talk about how to build container images, and we are going to talk about Docker files specifically. Okay. In Docker files, how do we write instructions and build instructions on building the images and then publishing them to the registry. Okay, so we will talk about Dockerfile. How do we get image from the Dockerfile and how do we upload them to a registry so that other users across the world can access our images and can run containers based on it. Okay, so I hope our expectations of these sessions are aligned. My name is Amit. I am in the industry for past 20 years now, and I've been training across all the technologies of DevOps, infrastructure, SRE, whatever you call it, for past 8 years. So that has been my training experience, and I'm involved with various corporates, and I teach people on who are ready to hit the market. So fresh graduates and people who have been in the industry for a long time as well. So yeah, that is me, and this is what we are going to talk about. Okay, I'm going to use this whiteboard for explaining the topics, right? If you face difficulty in seeing this, if it is too small, too big, do let me know. It all can be managed. Right. So first, let's talk about, I'm not going to talk about what is container. Okay, we all know what is a container. Let's talk about the container infrastructure. So the producer of the container, images, right, who develops container images, right? The person who develops container images will develop them for their solution, right? And then they want the end users to use those images, right? The end users will use those images. So let's say these are the end users, right? Now, what are the images? Images are nothing but a set of file system layers, which at the end contains all the tools, the libraries, the binaries, the configurations required for an application to run. Okay. For example, just to give you an example, if we have a container image to run Jenkins, right? So it would have, and this is an example, right? So for example, you will have libraries and binaries which are used by Jenkins, right? Maybe some file system libraries, some OS level libraries and all. And then on top of that, it might have the dependencies like maybe Java, right? And then it might have other dependencies like Tomcat, right? To run any jar-based application. And on top of that, there will be the actual application called Jenkins, right? So this entire setup is a container image. Okay, this entire setup in blue is a container image. This container image contains, well, this will be developed by the team who is developing Jenkins. And this image contains everything that is required to run Jenkins, right? So Jenkins, and then Jenkins depends on Tomcat, Tomcat depends on Java, and all these depend on the lower level libraries and binaries. And also there might be some, some configurations, configs like environment variables, files, etc. Right? So all this together makes a container image, which is an isolated entity, which is complete in its own, and it does not need anything else for its application to run. So the Jenkins team would produce such image, right? So they would produce such image so that people like me, people like you, and other teams in the world can use this image to run their Jenkins application, right? And this is just an example of Jenkins container image. You can similarly take example of any other container image, like for example, container image for Nginx, container image for only Tomcat, or for HTTPD, web servers, right? And anything that you imagine. So the developers would develop this image, and they expect the consumers, the end users, to consume this image, right? How do the developers share this image with the end users? Well, they share this by putting them in a shareable service, also known as container image registry. Okay, like Docker Hub. So the developer builds the image, and there are many images similar to Jenkins, right? So there are many container images uploaded on the Docker Hub. So the vendors also update their images on Docker Hub, and then end users download from that. Okay. If you have used Docker before, you might use a command called Docker pull to work with those images, right? So you download, you pull the image. Correct? So yeah, that's how it works. We are going to understand how does this part work. Our focus is here. How is this done? How does this work? This stuff in the right, in this white box. How do they produce images, and how do they publish the images on the registry? I'm not going to talk about how do consumers or end users use the images, right? That's a different discussion that I have had previously, and maybe in future we will also have some webinars on that. Okay, so let's talk about how does all this work. Just give me 1 second. All right, I'm coming back here. Sorry, I had to um, focus on something else. Okay, hopefully my screen is visible again. Do you see my screen? Okay, cool. Right, so we are going to talk about what happens in this white box. Right? All right, so the thing is, the producers, well, to publish their container image as here, what they need is they need two things. One is their application. Their application binary. For example, if they need Jenkins, then they take a Jenkins binary, or if it is HTTPD, then HTTPD binary, whatever binary they want to publish. And then they write the instructions to build this image into file. Let's say, do we have something here? Okay, we don't have any image for that. Anyways, I'm going to use, yeah. So they also take something called as a build file, which gives instructions on how to build something, Dockerfile. And this Docker file is nothing but instructions on how to build an image. Instructions to build image. Okay, that's what this Docker file is. Okay, so the producer or whoever is building the image will take the application binary, and then using the Docker file, they are going to produce the image and then push it to the remote registry. Okay, so I'm going to show you how do you write this Docker file. They also, obviously, they also need uh, the container tool like Docker on their systems so that they can actually build. Right? So Docker is required to actually build. So Docker takes this and this app binary to do this. Okay, so let's quickly go through our terminal. Let me know if you guys see my terminal here. And this is my Windows terminal. You can have Linux or Mac or whatever. And here I'm going to show you how it works. Okay. So basically it's pretty simple. You have some binary, let's say, um, And something like this. Okay. So for example, ah, uh, right. So let's say this is my binary here. Okay. And I have Docker also installed here in my system. So if I run Docker command, I can see some output. If I say Docker images, okay, so Docker container images not working. Just give me 1 second. Mhm. I'm starting up my Docker. So when I run this Docker command, it says permission denied. So that means Docker command was not working. Mhm. It is still not working. Okay. Let me get a different machine. Just give me a second, please. This was unexpected. Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, I can't seem to be able to fire this up. Just give me a second trying to fix this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this does not seem to work for me right now. I'm going to create a AWS instance. Just give me 2 seconds. You should be. Oh no. Okay. My AWS instance is also giving up. How do we solve this problem? All right, so give me 1 second. I'm going to join back and maybe I'm going to solve the problem there. Okay, so I'm just not able to run this thing, Docker. Okay. Oh, okay, maybe I'll try that running as administrator. Okay, that is also. Let's try this. All right, yes, this worked. Thank you. Amazing. You really saved me here. Okay, so all right, we have Docker here, right? And I'm logged in as an administrator. That's why login is working now. Okay, so I'm going to here. Okay, so I'm going to create a file called Dockerfile. I'm not sure Vim would work here. It might not. Okay, let's create a Docker file in Notepad. And here is my Notepad. And I can zoom in a bit. Okay, so what do we do in the Docker file? Yeah, so the Docker file is a basic file which has set of instructions. And each line is an instruction. So instruction 1, and then instruction 2, instruction 3. So something like this. Okay, these are our instructions. Now, instruction is nothing but a keyword and parameters. So parameter 1, parameter 2, something like that. So all instructions are like this. There is a keyword. Now, keywords are predefined. Right? So Docker has defined some keywords that you can use, and only those keywords can be used. Right? So you give a keyword and then parameter 1, parameter 2, or more parameters that you want to pass. And every line is just similar. You give one keyword, anything. So we need to understand, first of all, what is the purpose of Dockerfile? And second is, what are these keywords and what are the potential parameters for these keywords? Okay. Now, what happens with this Docker file? How is the Docker file treated? So in the Docker file, what Docker does is, if we have a Docker file and it has all those instructions, instruction 2, instruction 3, like that, Docker is going to read all these instructions one by one. Okay, it's going to read all these instructions one by one. First, it will read instruction 1, then execute it. So it will create some part of the image by executing instruction 1. Right? And then in some part of, once instruction 1 is done, then it's going to create instruction 2 and create a bit more part of the image. So it's going to execute all the instructions one by one. And once all the instructions are done, finally our image will be ready. Okay. Now, what do you define in these instructions? You can say, all right, download these binary into this image, create this file into this image, add this configuration into this image, add this file into this image, right? Copy files, download files, change permissions. Whatever you do on a system, all those instructions can be defined here. Right? So that's what we are going to do with this Docker file. Now, all those instructions are available, documented by Docker. So you can see a Docker file reference, and you can see all the files here, all the instructions here documented. So these are the instruction keywords, and these are the only instructions. Right? Maybe I can zoom in a bit. These are the instructions. Okay. Now, there is one very important instruction called from. So when you create an image, you have to specify what is the starting point of the image, right? For example, if we have to create this Jenkins container image, what is the starting point? Do we already have something, right? So for most of the images, the starting point is an existing image. Okay. So for example, if I want to build Jenkins, maybe there is an image already with Java, which somebody else, maybe some Java developer has built, which I can use as my starting point. And on top of that, I can add my Tomcat, I can add my Jenkins, I can add further, I can add more configurations, whatever I want. Okay, so you have to provide a starting point. If there is no existing image, you can start from scratch as well, but that's out of scope for this discussion. Okay, so this from instruction is something that is really important, and it has to be the first instruction of the Docker file. So a valid Docker file must start with a from instruction. Okay, so I'm going to write, let's say from, and then it has to be in caps. The instruction is in caps. And I can say, I can use an existing image, right? So how do I know existing images? I can go to Docker Hub and I can look for some image. For example, I can look for an image which already has Java, right? So this is an image called Alpine Java, which contains the whole Java. Okay, so I can use this Alpine Java image. So let me use that. So from Alpine Java, and I'll say just use latest. Now on top of this Java, what do I want to add? Right, I'm building an image which is nothing but files and configurations, right? So I can say copy some files. Okay, I can say run some command. For example, apk add tomcat or whatever. So apk is the package manager for Alpine, right? So apk add tomcat, or I can say from copy run. Then I can have some labels. Hmm? And there is an instruction for that label. Let's go to the top. Label, right? So we can define some label and some value. So which is just a metadata. So I can say label author, right? Author equal to Amit. I can define this label, right? And then I can say CMD. What is the default command to run when a container is started from this image, right? So I can say java dash jar some, let's say my binary dot jar, right? So I want to run this file whenever somebody starts the container. I want to run this file. Now, where is this file in the container? There is no this file. So maybe in the copy command, I can say my bin dot jar and copy it into the container as this is my local bin dot jar and copy that my bin dot jar. So what is my bin? I'm assuming it's an imaginary binary that we might have. And for creating an image for that binary so that anybody can run it, I say, hey, take the Alpine Java base image. Then on top of that, copy this local jar that I have built and copy it with the file mybin.jar name. So give it a name mybin.jar. Then add Tomcat. So Java is already coming from this image. Add Tomcat on top of it. Add some label to this image. And then define the default command. The default command is whatever command is executed when somebody does a Docker run or somebody deploys a container in the Kubernetes or wherever. Whatever application runs, this is what I want to run. Java jar mybin.jar. And this is your Docker file. Okay. So I'm going to save it. And now, what is this? Oh, this is a host file. Okay. And now you can see my Docker file. Okay, created a Dockerfile.txt. Let's rename it. It's a plain Docker file. Okay. So come on. So this is the content of my Docker file. Now, if I have to build an image, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say Docker build, use the file Docker file, and take whatever configurations and files are present from the current directory. So Docker build, use this file, and for uploading any files or making any changes, all the data is available in this directory. So this is current directory. You can give any other directory path if your binaries and everything are available in some other place. Okay, so I say this, and now Docker starts building. So it says fail to solve Alpine Java latest. So looks like that's not the correct full name. So let's fix that. this is the correct path. 22-JDK. Okay, let's run the build again. And what's going to do is it's going to download this Docker image. Right? So it downloaded the Docker image. It has loaded everything from this Docker image. But then it says, well, it has failed here. The error is to compute the checksum of this file, failed to solve. So looks like this file does not even exist in my current directory. So I'll just create an empty file. Like this. I'm just creating an empty file. And let's say this is a binary. It does not have anything right now, but let's assume this is a binary, which I want to put in the target image. Let's build image again. All right, so image is being built again. Now what do you see? It is loading everything from Alpine Java, then copying this file, and then apk add Tomcat. Okay, so it says Tomcat. There is no package called Tomcat. Let's add some other package, right? APK package. Or let's say install Tomcat in Alpine. This is done. This is done. So this is not very straightforward. Maybe I can add something else. Mhm. So like this, we have to do. We have to download this zip file, Tomcat zip file, and put it here. So all these commands which are supposed to be installed, these need to be run. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to do this. So maybe I will add some other package. I just want to demonstrate that how it can be done. That's apk add nginx. Yeah, let's run this command. So let's say our application requires nginx. So I'll say take this Java, copy this binary, install nginx application, add the label author equal to Amit, and then define the default command as this. Okay, let's run the build again. And now you see it did apk add nginx and everything is fine. Now if I say Docker images, okay, so there is this warning. Let's say Docker run, why the warning is here. CMD, right? We use CMD. Oh, like this. So we need to provide like this. Okay, I can provide like this as well. Although it just says this one also, but let's provide like this. Should not be something that should be complained about. Build again. I don't know why it goes up as soon as I type it. I don't see the new image created. Let's see. Okay, while building the image, we can also give the image a name, right? So I don't know why it just scrolls to the end. But if I do a Docker build, Dockerfile, the current directory, and then I can say, okay, give the latest image this name. And I press enter. Build happens again, hopefully. And okay, naming to Docker IO library, blah, blah. Okay, Docker image ls. Yes, so now you see this image is created. Okay, so what did I do? I ran this command docker build -f Dockerfile current directory, and this is the tag, the resultant image name that I want to give. Docker read the Docker file and it followed all the instructions, right? So from this, copy this, run this, and then CMD and whatever is required. And then finally, it says naming to Docker image name this, and it creates an image like this. Okay. And yeah, that's all. That's how the images are created. Now you can maybe say Docker run my image. You can try to run the my image command or my image container. And it will run, but it's going to fail. It will say invalid or corrupt jar mybin.jar because it is not actually a jar. But yeah, this is how image is. Now when you want to push it, okay, to push the image to the remote repository, we need authentication, right? So you can or any developer can authenticate their system. So if it is their laptop or their CI machine or whatever, they can authenticate their system to the registry by using like Docker login or whatever, and then do a Docker push. Okay, they can push this image to the remote repository. Just say Docker push and the image name, right? So if I say Docker push something like this, Docker push my image latest. Like this. Then if I'm authenticated, Docker is going to push the image to the remote repository. And this is what I wanted to show you. Most of the focus was on the Docker file. We are almost at the end of the time. So any questions? If there are any questions, you can put it in either in Q&A, or in chat. Ashina, thank you for helping me out with that, with idea of running PowerShell as admin. I don't see any questions. I'm not sure if we are still connected or Okay, there is a question in Q&A. Why have we not given the port number? Oh, that is, again, you can give. You can say, well, you can say, all right, I want to expose this application or something on port 9090, for example. So there is an instruction for exposing specific ports also. So when you will run a Docker container, application will be available on this port of the container. Cool. I hope I answered the question. So that's all I had for today. Thank you for your time. I hope I was able to um, impart some understanding of Docker. Oh, there's a question. Do we need a Docker Hub account? Yes, you need a Docker Hub account to push the image to the Docker Hub. Absolutely. Without Docker Hub account, it won't be possible. All right. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session. Please provide your feedback. And I'm going to meet you in some other session now. Thank you very much. You will get the recordings from SkillUpRight later. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.